You're listening to Mr. Liverpool himself, Frank Carlyle, exclusively on Mersey Radio.
Good evening, everybody out there. This is Mersey Radio. I'm Frank Carlyle, and in the studio we have a very special guest, Ian Golder.
Evening, Frank.
How are you?
I'm okay, mate.
Okay. And we have a fellow historian, entrepreneur, Dapper Dan himself,
Mr. O'Hare.
Mr. O'Hare, all the way from
Shrewsbury.
He's come from Shrewsbury.
There's
no jazz tonight.
I think I am here, Frank. Just be in the Dockers Club.
Did you give a train?
Yeah, I'm always on the third meet.
Anyway, it's good evening as well to everybody out there. It's good afternoon wherever you are over there in America. It's good morning for Australia and New Zealand, and it's good afternoon also in Canada, because we have a lot of listeners over there also. Pish Marley, he'll be listening in, and his family and mates and rockers, bar owners and people in bars and
Mounties.
Aunties and uncles here, everybody.
Mounties.
Oh, Mounties, I thought you said aunties. I was going to say uncles as well. But anyway, we have a great line-up, to be honest, because we have Derek Shelmerdine. And Derek Shelmerdine, his topic is Brian Casser, a.k.a. or Aka, Casey Jones. And he'll be talking a lot about him. Not only that, other stuff from the Mersey Beat era, or any era that you want to talk about. So we have Derek on. He's great as well. Remember the last time he was on. Anyway, we have Tim Quinn the novelist. And Tim is a local lad, and he's written some good stuff, as they say. So we'll be talking to him. And of course, Joe Whittaker. Where from, boys?
Hollywood.
California.
She's a California girl.
She's a California girl with a nice tan, loads of mates, loads of money, loads of everything.
She's flying us all over there.
She's flying us all over there, and we're going to stay there for a while, aren't we? A few weeks.
I ain't coming back.
In Hollywood.
Yeah.
Then she's flying me off to a boat hole, which is in Barbados.
Yeah.
While you make your way home.
That's all right. We'll take our time, John.
We'll take that.
Route 66.
You do know she was going to employ us as cleaners. That was the reason we were going.
Oh, was it? Yeah, started. Waiting on.
Yeah. Well, listen, lads. The weather. What about the weather?
It's been a bit. What happened to the heat wave yesterday?
Oh, it wasn't too bad. It wasn't too bad yesterday.
It
was freezing.
Yeah, it was.
It's cold today.
Yeah, it was cold today as well.
Yeah.
And it's strange, isn't it, the way some people can adapt to cold weather, because it's cold here.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with the sun, because it's getting hotter. But it's the cold air, and the cold air now is coming down from the Arctic, and we're going to have a very cold Easter weekend.
Well, I think they said it was the hottest day of the year, wasn't it, so far? But it was from down south. I was about to say, everything was concentrated about what was going on down south, wasn't it? Really?
Yeah. What do you think of the football over the weekend?
We're treading water happily, if you know what I mean. I think I wasn't expecting to be honest. I really wasn't expecting to win.
Because I was talking to you before the game,
and
you wasn't really confident, was you? Because when you seen the lineup,
well, even before I seen the lineup, I thought, I'm not fancying this. We're really on our uppers now as far as the squad's concerned.
Is this because of injuries?
Yeah. We've been over it a time and again, haven't we? But the squad just looks so. But credit to the two lads to come on and the rest of the team perform.
What did you say, John? You said, didn't you? We're going back to the one-man show.
Yeah, I thought. I have to be honest. When I saw the lineup myself, I thought he's not going to take a risk, especially against a club that we have a habit of kind of coming unstuck against. And then, obviously, the first half, as far as I could tell, it was just going nowhere. It was terrible.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, what is he doing? He's not making a point that he needs new players. Everybody knows that anyway. But he seems to be taking awful risks. I mean, Woodburn is not, I don't think, he's one for the future, but he's not one for now.
No, he's certainly not one for now. Neither is that Alexander-Arnold.
No, I don't.
You know, he's a good lad, he's a big lad. But he was, to me, the pair of them were totally out of the depth. That's why he was so bad in the first half. And it was just like they were all over the place. In all honesty, they were all over the place. Point is, when he changed it, I said to you, didn't I, at half time? Oh no, it was Michael Carter. Michael Carter. He phoned me up from Belfast, and he said, "What do you think?" And I said, "It's dreadful." I said, second half coming out, not the 70th minute or anything like that. For us to get something out of the game, he must change the personnel now. He must bring on Coutinho, Firmino and Sturridge.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And when he did finally bring Sturridge on, it was the start of the comeback.
I still think Sturridge should be playing more regularly. I don't care what issues he's got.
The thing is, none of us know, do we, what the situation is, because, you know...
It's like you said with Saka, wasn't it, really?
Well, even going to talking about Coutinho, but I mean, we had this discussion as well, like, you know, if he was ill, as reported, how could he be sitting on a bench? If he's ill, if you're ill, in a sick way, you know, you've got a bug or whatever, you can't, you've got to stay at home, haven't you?
You won't be on the bench.
You know what I mean? Because it's not only that, you can spread bugs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It could go through the team.
That happened with Tottenham, didn't it?
Yeah, it certainly did. And, you know, so you can't really take chances. So you don't know what's going on. It could have been tired or something.
Something strange, isn't it? I mean, for them to... I mean, the two young lads, I think they'll be here for a few years yet, you know what I mean? And their time will come. Hopefully they're not just being put in the team to up the price, so to speak.
Do you think it's likely that now we're getting told that we're going to be, you know, getting X, Y and Z sort of players coming in? As Frank said last week, we're in a situation where we seem to be a selling team. Do you think that can be reversed now? Well, it needs to be, doesn't it?
Ian Doyle come out in the Echo, didn't he? And he said, you know, these Liverpool fans are getting excited over a reported £100 million spent by the owners in the summer. And he said, but they shouldn't be getting excited about that. He said, because it's more than likely going to be double that. Now, we all know FSG's average net spend over the years must be like 20 million or something.
But it came out, didn't it? It was on a BBC programme last week or the week before. Last week it was. And it said that Liverpool's net spend was minus 12.
Really?
Yeah.
So, you know, you can't really judge that the owners are spending money on players. They're not.
For them to sell, and for them to spend 200 million in the summer, even including, you know, even if they gross it, it'd be ripping it all up and starting again, because that's not what they do. You know what I mean?
No, that's not what they do.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
See, someone said to me, "Well, Liverpool are rebuilding, and next season they'll be rebuilding." The thing is, ever since 2009, 2010, they've been rebuilt after that season, because that was a great season, great team. They started to rebuild again, and they've been building it ever since. So how long does a team take to rebuild? Does it take this long?
Well, this is the point, and if you're saying, well, we're going to spend 200 million, 100 million, whatever it is, in the summer, those players are going to come in, gel, settle in, start working as a new team, and you're saying we need 5 players, really.
You'd only have to look at United with Pogba and Ibrahimovic.
Classic players.
Okay, see, you said about Pogba and you said about 100 million, and our fans are getting excited. There's one player who cost 80.
Yeah.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
And, you know, you could say that about Ronaldo as well, 80 million. So what Liverpool really need is not just like... I think they need 4 players, because when they were associated with Hector, Higuain, and Hummels, Matty Hummels, that's a spine.
Yeah, it is.
And unfortunately, we didn't get any of them. And that's the point of Liverpool Football Club. That's the point. There's no spine there at the moment. Albeit people might think there isn't.
No, I mean, we don't need, but, you know, you look at, like, the Lucas situation, you look at the, you know, the defensive midfielder, whether we, you know, some people believe we shouldn't need one, but, you know, you look at what we've had in the past and what we've got now. You look at the goalkeeping situation, there's no main striker, there's no left back. There's not enough steel in midfield anyway.
Mm-hmm. The left back situation is absolutely ridiculous because Liverpool today have a right-sided midfield player playing left back, and that's where the Stoke game, that's where the goal emanated from.
Yeah, but wasn't Klein playing there on Saturday?
Yeah, Klein was playing there.
So he switched.
He switched to accommodate younger Alexander-Arnold.
Yeah.
So they never attacked Arnold. They attacked Klein because he's not a left back.
It was a back three, wasn't it?
Yeah. So they just attacked him.
Yeah.
And, you know, so we're not saying that we're great tacticians or anything like that, but we can see where we're wrong.
Mm-hmm. I think, I mean, take me hat off to Milner playing in that position and doing as well as he has done this season. You know what I mean? But
do you think though, looking at next season, whether they're in the Champions League or not, that the left back situation will be addressed, or do you think that he'll still say, oh, well, he's still good enough, we don't need a left back?
No, he's got to.
No, but what if he doesn't? What would you think?
The worry there is that he did say, I would have signed somebody if I needed them.
It's all right saying that.
You know, and it was always that we did.
Yeah, but then he's always, I'm sure he's also said that, you know, we need a left. We do need one. So it's like the Manny situation. He definitely come out and said, you know, we need to replace Manny's pace in January.
Yeah, he did.
I remember him saying it.
Yeah.
And then he said, then in January he said, we don't need anybody.
Yeah.
Now,
he never thought, in my opinion, we never thought that, or he never thought about the injuries either. He must have thought that they were all supermen and they would never get injured.
Well, I think,
and that was the horriblest. Yeah. You know, from the end of December, right up till February.
Middle of February.
Yeah, non-stop.
The middle of February, and couldn't win.
I still say if we'd have brought players in January, 2 players, I think we'd have been challenging Chelsea.
Yeah, I totally agree there.
Because the football we were playing was probably the best anyone's played this season.
Yeah,
at that point.
It was like, unfortunately, because we have that lack of strength and depth in the depth, then obviously has led us into this situation now. If that isn't rectified next year, we could find we're going to become a cropper quicker.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be worried next season. I mean, this is the big summer again. But you know, if we get to August and we look at the squad and everything, hang on. I mean, just for instance, say we don't qualify for the Champions League, we still want success next season as fans. You know, it'll be disappointing. It'd be criminal, really, that we haven't qualified from the position we were in. But if we look at that squad in August and we think like we did last August, then where do we stand there? Are the fans actually going to say, listen?
No, because as I said before, people really think, some fans, especially on social network, think that they walk on water. And they think everybody walks on water who's associated with Liverpool Football Club, and that includes players as well.
Yeah.
And you're looking at players that are very ordinary, and they think they walk on water because they wear a red shirt, and that's where they fall down. They don't see the bigger picture, because we're from the old school. We see what's happening on the field. Don't get me wrong. I asked a simple question. I said, of Liverpool progress from last season on social network? And there was a few comments, and there was one comment. You know, they all said, no, we haven't. Because what they looked at were the 2 cup finals and still trying to get into a Champions League place. So other people, just one, said, yeah, we have progressed. You have a look at where we are now. We're 4th. Well, that fourth could easily be...
We're third.
Could easily be fifth, sixth. Now, the point is, what this particular person said was, even if we finished sixth or seventh, it's still improvement from last season, and that's the way they look at it.
That's ridiculous.
It's absolutely ridiculous.
What did we say was it yesterday when we were talking and we said, look at the players in the team, look at the players in the squad, who's improved this season from last? Because last season players did improve. Klopp got more out of them. He improved. This season, who's moved forward? I don't think Chan has. I think Chan's gone.
Do you think? I think Chan's been quite consistent.
He's been okay the last few weeks.
The last few weeks.
The last 3 weeks.
The last few weeks, because he was, and he admitted it.
Yeah.
He admitted it that he was awful. He wasn't. He was terrible. And going the game and watching it, absolutely dreadful. Now he has improved in the last few weeks. Yeah. The only player, in my opinion, who's improved from last season is Lallana.
Yeah, I go along with that. He's been.
I think. Firmino's been in and out, hot and cold. Yeah. But he's still got a year extra in the Premier League behind him. So I think he's progressing. I think Coutinho was great last year anyway, and you go right through the team like that. There's players in the team that they're not really going to go any further. They're not really going to progress anymore. I think Lovren's come back in and looked stronger over the course of the season.
Massive. What did you think of him?
Well, he's a new player and he's bedding in. So next season we should see
He should be better. Yeah.
The goalkeeping situation hasn't been improved.
No, Mini, I think he's been better than last year, though. To a certain extent. But you're saying he's not the right keeper for Liverpool. You need to get somebody in there.
We need someone who commands the box, don't we?
Yeah, of course.
You know what I mean?
Of course, you need someone who
He made a couple of great saves on against Stoke.
Yeah, he did.
Well, he did, because he saved the points there.
Yeah.
No matter. But having said that, it's over the years. He's cost Liverpool so many points over the years, so many games he's cost. Even this season he's cost Liverpool. Now, you have one good game, and that's the problem with some fans, because a player has a game and they're also give him a 5-year contract and everything else. It's just ridiculous. We don't need anyone. And this is the mentality of some Liverpool football fans, unfortunately.
I still think Klopp bought Karius. I couldn't even remember his name. I still think Klopp bought Karius for him to be his number one.
Of course he did, because he gave him the number one shirt.
I still think he's going to be eventually.
Eventually, probably.
Well, how is he? Because
in the meantime,
he's not good enough.
Yeah,
he's seen something, hasn't he? He's seen something in him.
De Gea went through a sticky patch in it as well.
But not as bad as this.
No.
Not as bad as this. You could see the potential in there, De Gea, whatever his name was.
Yeah.
You could see the potential. You knew that he was a good goalkeeper. And I thought, whoa,
Well, he mentioned about Karius needing to beef up, and you thought, hang on, why did we buy him? If he's not, if he hasn't got the strength, mentally or physically, for the demands of the Premier League, why have we got him now?
See, what you're forgetting there as well, Ian. I know what you said about the demands and everything else. This is Liverpool Football Club, the most successful club, British club in Europe. We stand alongside teams in World Club Football that holds the European Cup for keeps. We're the only British side ever to do so. Now, that's what you're looking at. So why get a goalkeeper? Why buy a goalkeeper if he's in hope that he become good?
You see, I have a funny feeling with Klopp. And this has gone with a couple of managers coming in through the past, and it's still happening now with Guardiola, is that they don't understand how physical and different the English game is to where they've come from. Because German is different from the English game completely. Physically, it's similar in certain ways, but it's not the same. And a lot of these managers have come in and had a bit of a shock to the system. And it's happened for 20, 30 years. But the problem is, in a lot of cases, Liverpool, we haven't got enough English managers coming through the net to actually relate and know the culture and know how it's built and know the traditions and things like that.
See, the way Liverpool play, I don't know whether you agree with me here, but the way Liverpool play now is more continental.
Well, yeah.
And that's why they beat the big teams.
Yeah.
You know, so easy, because the unfortunate thing is I don't like saying smaller teams.
No,
I just don't like saying that. But I have to. And it's the smaller teams that we come unstuck against. Because that Bournemouth game last week was absolutely ridiculous.
Dreadful.
It was absolutely ridiculous. 2-2. Winning 2-1.
Yeah.
You'd expect them to go on and score 1 or 2 more goals, you know, and win comfortably. And in the last 4 minutes, they equalised.
You knew it was coming.
Yeah, but that's what I mean.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. So you see the confidence. I'm talking about fans here. The confidence has gone from the fans, because they're willing, you know, albeit that they're winning, like say 1-0 or 2-1. We need more goals.
The atmosphere in that game, by the way, was dire. That Bournemouth game. I remember I was just sitting there, and I just thought, you could hear a pin drop in here. I just thought for a second, let's just listen to the ball was getting knocked about, and there was absolute silence.
That's
and
ridiculous.
I thought,
Well, why do you think that? Is it because of like foreign spectators coming down, and you know?
No, I don't know. I mean, you're talking about a midweek game, when I don't think it's, you know, all the big clubs, the massive clubs, which is what we are, have that, you know, that support coming to the grounds, and I just think.
But it's been like that for a few years now, Ian. It's not just that.
Don't forget, when the team are playing well, the crowd are up for it. I mean, we've seen that a couple of years ago. You know, if we were 7 games away from the title, or you know, on the verge of hopefully winning the title, you know, with 7 games to go in a midweek game a couple of years ago, you know, the crowd were buzzing.
Yeah, of course they were.
Well, you know, so I think a lot of it's to do with that.
What you've got to think of as well, I understand precisely what you're saying, but what you've got to understand now is that Liverpool are fighting for the Champions League spot, and that Champions League spot is paramount for what Liverpool really need to achieve.
Yeah.
Because Klopp, great manager he is, he's targeted players, and I reckon that they've got back agents or whatever, you know, and said, if you get in the Champions League, we're there. But what's the other barrier? If Liverpool are in the Champions League, you know, that Klopp has targeted players. What's the main barrier with them not coming here?
The wages.
The wages.
Yeah.
Because no matter what, you know, people say they're disgusting. We don't want him if he. But they're not looking again at the bigger picture.
No.
They're not looking at the bigger picture, because any of those people who say, well, we don't want him because, you know, we've seen the money he wants. The point is, would they stay in the same job if they're offered more money, doing the very, very same job at another firm or another whatever?
I think it's obvious we're only getting a player if Chelsea and City and even United don't want them. Well, that's the only way it's going to happen.
It's been like that for years.
Yeah, I mean, them 3 are going to pay more. The money Ibrahimovic is on is ridiculous. You know, there's no way in a million years are we paying them wages.
But we needed someone like Iman Brimovic. We needed someone like him.
I just asked you, it confuses me this, because Liverpool in the top 10 financially. I mean, obviously in England, United are the only one technically supposedly pulling a bigger income than we are. And looking at Chelsea and the wages they offer, who are below us, and so is Arsenal. No, Chelsea. What I mean to say is in the financial leagues, as far as like income, we get more than Chelsea do.
No,
we're richer than Chelsea.
Not are we?
Yeah, on income. So based on that, and also Arsenal's that situation, why aren't we? Can I be enough to offer these wages? Why can't we increase our wage bill and bring these sorts of players? And surely there's a reason why we can't do that.
Because, as you're saying there, no matter how you look at Liverpool, all you've got to say is net spend.
Yeah.
Minus 12 million.
Yeah.
Minus 12 million. That's why the minus 12 million is a cap on wages. Not only a cap on wages, but also getting rid of players. That's why it's minus 12.
We've got also as well, but you've got to take into account of the agency fees. We're top of that league.
Yeah.
We pay agents more than anybody else in Europe.
That's nuts.
That is nuts.
And
I think I'll become an agent.
That's, so again, they can't have it both ways, can they? They're saying we don't want to pay the wages, we can't pay this fee, but then they pay the agents astronomical money. So why not try and cut down on the agency fees and put it towards the pot? And also, when you talk about deals, transfer deals, it's about the package, isn't it? So it's the length of contract, the wages and the fee. So, for instance, Andy Carroll wasn't as bad a deal as when we sold him.
Even Ben Secchi.
Yeah, because they're not on a higher wage, So, although we paid what we did for Andy Carroll, and people would give Liverpool a lot of stick for it, his wages were relatively low.
Well, they're like that with them all now.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I've got to do a mention, and the mention is this is brilliant. This because St George's Hall, John. Sorry about this, Ian.
No, it's all right, mate.
Right, this is a little bit of a history here, and it'll be lifting the floor up. Lifting the floor up. The Minton Side floor on Thursday the 13th of this month, obviously. Next week, isn't it?
Yes.
This week. It's this week.
Is it this week? Yeah.
This Thursday, isn't it?
Yeah, the 13th Thursday, yeah.
And it's so lifted to the 19th. So you've got a week in which to get along there. If you haven't seen it, you've got to see it. It's absolutely stupendous. I love it. I really love it. So I'll be going. I'll be having a look. Mm-hmm. I'm going to bring my little granddaughter, Sophia, to show her it. When
was the last time? It was only a couple of years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, because they try to do it now every year.
Right.
They try to do it every year, which is fantastic. Which is fantastic. And people just... the first time I seen it, a few years ago now, I walked in with Frank Richardson, and he said... and as we walked in, I just looked and I went, wow. It took me breath away. It really did. And you see these wonderful people, just looking at this Minton Side floor in awe. Yeah. And I was just stupefied. It's absolutely brilliant. And also, well, that's on Thursday the 13th, right up until Wednesday the 19th of April. And you've got to go along and see it. This is for people who hasn't seen it. It's absolutely brilliant. Anyway, and Jamie Summers. Now, Jamie's a singer. He's a great Liverpool entertainer. And he's presenting a night of variety in Liverpool. And it's at the Neptune. Not the Neptune, it's the Epstein. I'm sorry about that Epstein Theatre. It was the Neptune at one time. Well, anyway, it's the Epstein Theatre, and it's on Saturday, June the 24th, 2017. And the doors open at 7 p.m, and the show starts at 8 p.m, and the tickets are £16, but look who you're getting. You've got Searching, which is a friend of us, Searching, Andy Gamble's Searching. Yeah. So you've got those on, and they're phenomenal, as you know. Yeah. They're absolutely brilliant entertainers. Searching. And they're on. I think they're top of the list. Steve Daly as Elton John. So he's on. Phil Steele, the $1 million hypnotist. So that should be fun. So it's a variety show, isn't it, as it says. Laura Simpson, now I've heard this girl myself. Yeah. And do you know what she is? An electric violinist.
Wow. Oh, nice.
Brilliant. Yeah. Absolutely brilliant. And if you've ever heard a violin, I love the violin, by the way. Yeah. But, an electronic one. Yeah. Absolutely amazing. And that girl is unbelievable. And, there's a fella on the internet, isn't there, social network called Lecky Legs. Yeah. And he's making a guest appearance.
Is he?
Yeah.
Lecky Legs?
Yeah. Haven't you heard of him?
No.
You know what I mean? So,
He goes round all the pub bars in town doing the mad
you
dance.
just see him walking like through Williamson Square, and he's dancing away, but it's unbelievable. Do you know what he reminds me of? Not being John Cleese. You know, with all them mad steps. And so, he's just going to go on for 5 minutes. But I think
search it on YouTube, John.
I'll have a go with that.
And of course, Jamie himself, great singer. He's been on the show, hasn't he, Jason? Yes. Before. And so there you are. You've got Searching, as I said. I think they are the UK's leading tribute to the Searchers. I think they're fantastic. Steve Daly, Elton John as Elton John. Phil Steele, the $1 million hypnotist. I think that should be fun because he'll have people running around like chickens and whatever. Mara Simpson, electric rock violinist. You've heard, when you see Nigel, what's his name?
Nigel Kennedy.
Yeah.
And similar to him.
Mm-hmm.
Rock versions and classical music and everything, brilliant. And Jamie himself, Jamie Summers. So it should be a fantastic show. And the tickets are £16, and that's on the 24th of June at the Epstein Theatre. So we'll be saying more about this, won't we, as it goes on. So we're only in April now, so I thought I'd give it a mention. And, just get along.
I do think, I know tickets are selling fast for it.
Yeah, I know.
Really fast, yeah.
Thanks for stealing me tons of.
Sorry, mate.
That's why I
don't say much, and every time I do, you shoot me down.
No, I'm not shooting you down. He's not half argumentative, I'm not. Anyway, no, you're right there. They are selling fast, Jason. Why is it? I'm looking at Jamie here, I can see Jamie's face. Anyway, it's Jason, you're right, they are selling fast, so, try and get in there and it'll be a smashing night. It really will be a good night. Go for a bevy afterwards after the show, because you're right in the heart of town. You're right in Hanover Street. Yeah. And you can come and see me like a bag of rags the post office. Anyway, so that's £16. And I'll tell you what, shall we play a song? I'll tell you what, And this song is by, it's called Don't Aha by Casey Jones and the Governors. Here, Casey Jones and the Governors. Right, so it's Casey Jones and the Governors, and then we'll be talking to Derek Shelmerdine about Casey Jones. How's that? Right after the song. So it's Don't Aha by Casey Jones and the Governors.
You're listening to Mersey Radio. Mersey Radio. Broadcasting to Merseyside and the world.
Imagine if you could escape right now to somewhere sunny, relaxed and fun-filled. Go on, you know you deserve it. Come to Villanova Park, your first-class holiday park just outside of Barcelona. Villanova Park offers it all with a heated indoor pool, terrace bar, gym and much, much more. Why not take advantage of our winter sun offers and enjoy a self-catering 2-bedroom chalet for 4 from as little as £96 for 3 nights. Escape to the sun this winter. Call our local representatives for special deals on 075 44 393 472. Villanova Park. You know you want to.
Have you got a special occasion coming up? Need the wow factor? Then look no further than Stevie Mac's Party Shop, the one-stop shop for all your party needs. DJs, balloons, banners, mascot hire, candy floss, popcorn and much, much more. Call 0151 525 0872 or visit our website steviemacs.co.uk.
Is your garden looking tired, untidy, need some help to spruce it up? Why not call AJ Walton Garden Services? Lawns, hedges, jet washing and much, much more. All areas covered. With a special offer of £10 every 2 weeks or £15 every 4 weeks. Call John now on 07474 727 951.
Does your company need to raise its profile? Then why not advertise on Mersey Radio, with packages starting from as little as £30 per month. For more details, you can call us on 0151 324 1616 or 0151 324 0600, or you can email advertise@merseyradio.co.uk. The best in 60s and 70s music, plus a little bit of history. Tune into Frank Carlyle every Monday at 8 p.m. here, only on Mersey Radio.
Isn't that absolutely fantastic? And it's great, that we can have somebody on, Derek Shelmerdine, who can talk about these particular people. I'm going to ask him a question here. I'm going to ask him a little question as soon as he comes on. And I know that we've got him there. But anyway, if anyone wants to know anything about popular culture, pop music that is, from the Beatles and everything else right through, you've heard of the big three, haven't you? You haven't? No, you're looking at me with a blank face.
I was before you said that.
Yeah, well, that was... I'm quite surprised, actually, because you come out, don't you, Ian, with some bizarre names, and I go, who are they? Right, and I've just mentioned a fabulous group, by the way, in the Mersey Beat area, called the Big Three. You've never heard of them? No. Oh, well, that's the answer. Well, I'll see you on your way out. Will you just close the door? Anyway, we're going over now to Derek Shelmerdine. I'm going to ask him this question. This gets on my nerves. It keeps pulling on this, and it keeps dragging. It really does. It really. I'll have to change the earphones. It really will. Anyway, we're going over to Derek. Hello, Derek.
Oh, Frank.
I'm having problems here with my studio guests. No one's ever heard of the Big Three, one of them, but the other fella has. And I'm going to ask you a question here, Derek. I'm going to ask you a question because I know that you've got an affiliation towards, say, St George's Hall, am I right? Well, you know about it.
A little.
Yeah, a little. Okay. Well, I'm going to ask you, have you ever seen the Minton tile floor? Because we've just been mentioning about it, the St George's Hall. And the Minton tile floor, the cover, is going to be lifted so that people can have a look at it. Have you ever seen it before?
No, I haven't actually.
It's absolutely wonderful, Derek.
I can imagine.
It's one of the greatest sights, floors that you could possibly see. And there are some magnificent floors around the world. But that one, see it before the big pearly gates, if you like.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got to go and see them sometime. Anyway, do you know what? I'm just reading here, Casser and the Casanovas at the Mardi Gras and at St George's Hall. Unbelievable. And I can't believe that the Big Three, Ian Golder, who is, by the way, he's an authority himself on music. Groups and everything else, and he's never heard of them. So can you tell us a little bit more about the Mardi Gras and the Arts Ball and St George's Hall and Adrian Barber, Johnny Hutchinson, Johnny Gustafson? They were the Big Three, and Brian Cassard decided to try his luck in London. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, the Big Three were widely thought locally at the time to be the first Liverpool band to sort of crack it nationally.
That's right.
But for some, it's one of those really strange situations where they were. I saw them a few times. They were probably my favourite Liverpool. Them and the Undertakers were my favourite Liverpool bands at the time, and I saw them both a few times. And they were unbelievable live, but they didn't quite manage to capture it on records. I mean, they did have a couple of. Well, they have 4 singles in all. I mean, the first two people who've heard of the Big Three will have heard of. It's the first one was Some Other Guy. That managed to get to 7 on the charts. And by the way, got to 22 on the charts. But they never really quite cracked it. But what happened was, it all started with Casey Jones back in the late 50s. He was actually born in Newcastle, but he was brought up in Liverpool. And he's got connections all over the place. I mean, the guy is one of the real unsung heroes of rock and roll, particularly Merseybeat. Yeah. But sadly, he moved on before the commercial success came. Yeah. But he did some national service, and he met Bill Wyman. They were in the RAF together in Germany.
Really?
And they formed a skiffle group. Yeah, he was in a skiffle group with Bill Wyman.
Really?
And that's definitely kosher, because it's actually in Bill Wyman's blues book, which is well worth reading. Wow. Obviously, Bill Wyman went on to great things.
Well,
yeah, he opened in sort of late 58, early 59. He opened the Casanova Club in London, in Liverpool, before he formed Cass and the Casanovas, sort of 59.
Yeah. Well, what about, like, I know the Beatles, I know they supported the Beatles at one stage, the big three, and, they were actually made up, that they were actually one of the support bands. Am I right at saying that, by the way?
Oh, very much so. I mean, by the time the big three came to support them at that stage, I mean, the Beatles were headed on. I mean, it took them a long time to get going, but from the time in October '62 when they released "Love Me Do," the first single, they very quickly became very, very, very big. But what happened? They both did an audition for Larry Parnes and Billy Fury to be the backing band.
Oh, right.
And Tommy Moore, the Beatles drummer, was actually late. Right. So Johnny Hutchinson stood in for him. So, they've got connections. Well, they've got a few connections to the Beatles. Because, funnily enough, Johnny Hutchinson also stood in for about 3 gigs after Pete left and before Ringo joined.
Right.
So he stood in a couple of times.
So he was an original big three, yeah, Johnny Hutchinson.
Oh, very much so, yeah. I mean, Adrian Barber and Johnny Hutchinson, and Johnny Gustafson were the original big three. But what happened was that Cass and the Casanovas went through a few lineup changes. In fact, they split up. The big three started when Cass and the Casanovas split up around sort of December 1960. And Brian Casser headed off to London to try his luck down there. And he was in a few interesting things there. He was the manager of the Blue Gardenia club.
Well, can you give us some idea, obviously, I think you might know this, Derek, why they were called the Big Three? Because why were they called the Big Three?
I've never seen a definitive reason, but I would imagine it was because they came back down from being a quartet again when he left, and they were very, very much a power trio. I think it was probably to sort of reinforce that. I mean, that was the thing about when they were live. I mean, they were a very loud band. They were a very big band. They had a very big sound.
Well, I thought one of them was a big lad.
It's John O'Hare here. Good to hear you again, Brian. I do believe I've seen an interview with Johnny Gustafson, I think it was, and he'd said at the time there was obviously all the big three politicians, Derek. It was Khrushchev, it was Truman, and Churchill, and there was the big three. There was the big meeting of the big three in Tehran, and they thought, oh yeah, well, we're the big three lads, with 3 of us. The big three it was a poignant thing in the press at that time, and that was where they got the name from.
Right.
Isn't that unbelievable? Listen, the first time I ever heard Some Other Guy, do you know I heard singing it? I was at I bunked off school. I always remember this. And we went to, I forget where it was. It was somewhere anyway. So bunked off school, went up, and I was looking at these lads. You ever remember the Dennisons, Derek?
Yeah, I do.
And they sang Some Other Guy.
Some Other Guy, yeah.
Some Other Guy now is taking my love away from me. Whoa, now. That's it. Do you think I passed the audition there?
Without a shadow of a doubt.
But anyway, this is fascinating stuff, it really is. And what about this I'm With You, because I've never heard of this, I'm With You, that song.
No, it's...
Is it an ambiguous one? Is it one that's just well, obviously I've never heard it play before. Is it one that's just forgotten?
I think so. It's just sort of drifted into the sands of time, really. I mean, what's interesting, that Don't Ha Ha was a very big hit for Casey Jones, as he called himself, and the Governors at that stage. Because what happened was that Brian Casser, as Casey Jones, went off to Germany because everybody played Hamburg a lot. And he was very popular over there, and basically stayed over there. And that was around 65. That was a very big hit for him in Germany. In fact, he had a string of hits over there.
What year are you talking about now?
Well, that Don't Ha Ha was 1965.
Oh, right, because, he split, didn't he, with Brian Epstein?
That's right. Well, the Big Three itself, I mean, they signed up with Brian Epstein around the sort of 1962, before the Big Three went to Hamburg. Right. But again, that was, and I've seen it reported as Brian Epstein's only failure, but that's not quite true. I mean, Tommy Quickly didn't have too much success with him. But it didn't really work out with Brian Epstein either. I think the Big Three is one of the real sad stories of certainly Merseybeat and British sort of rock and roll in general, really, because the luck didn't seem to run with them. Apparently, when they recorded Some of the Guy, it was actually the recording that they'd done at the audition for Decca, and then Decca insisted that they put that version out as the single, and I mean the Big Three weren't happy about that, as you can imagine, because they wanted to re-record it.
Yeah. I said, Derek, I've seen other things about this, because they do seem to have terrible luck. I mean, they recorded an album, and I think it was Decca wiped all the tapes, and then they did they were going to do a live album, which was the Big Three Live and Unleashed, I think it was, in the Cavern. And again, guess what? A lot of them were destroyed and it wasn't recording, and they were left with 4 of the tracks on the live, and they released it as an EP instead. And they seem to be cursed. Obviously, the original lineup, they all wanted to better things, obviously in one thing or another. But also Johnny Hutchison. I mean, I was going to ask you about him. He seemed to have the best look of the lot of them, really. But was it true that when you said he filled in for the Beatles, was there any rumours that he could have stayed on with the Beatles rather than Ringo coming in, or?
I've never seen any reports that said they actually offered him the job, because they knew Ringo as well, very well from Hamburg, and they'd actually Ringo had stood in a few times while they were playing in Hamburg, and he actually recorded with the Beatles in Hamburg as well.
Did he?
Yeah. When Rory Storm was playing out there at the same time, and not technically the first Beatles recording session, but certainly in Hamburg. They did a recording session with Ringo.
That's come as a great surprise. It's a good surprise, actually, because, people, like myself included, we know that Ringo was a good drummer with Rory, and John Lennon liked Rory Storm and the Hurricanes, because they were all mates, they were all like mingling together and, encouraging each other. And that has come as a great, great surprise to me that he actually was over there in Hamburg and did a session with them.
Yeah, they recorded.
Was there any, Derek, animosity between, when Ringo actually left Rory Storm to go with the Beatles, was there any animosity between Rory and the rest of the lads, the rest of the Hurricanes against the Beatles, because they more or less stolen their top drummer?
Yeah, I don't think so, to be honest. I've never seen anything that said, there was a big hoo-ha or anything. Because a lot of people moved around in those days, from band to band. And as you say, I mean, they all knew each other very well from the Hamburg days and the Cavern days. I don't think there was any animosity associated with the move.
The same sort of thing happened years later, didn't it? And with Eric's, I had Eric, sorry, Ian.
Hi.
With the Eric scene, the same sort of thing happened. All the artists ended up playing in different bands, and then they just progressed and became known as who they became as in the end, and you know.
Yeah, that's strange. That's a good point. What Ian just said there.
Have you actually seen the you know, the wall thing that you get at pubs in Liverpool, and there's one of Eric's. Yeah. And it shows like it's like a tree, isn't it? A family tree of Eric's, and basically you've got all the artists and what bands they played in, and as it comes down, it's the final.
Well, do you know
bands.
Newington Street?
Yeah.
You've got the beer house there, and you go into the back and you see like a tiles wall. Well, it's not like it is a tiles wall, and you see all the names, you know, by the signatures of these lads. Everyone, Peter Hooton's there, John Power's there, and you see them all, and they're all there. Nash is there, you know. So it's great to say. I think what Ian's just said there, it struck a chord with me, because do you reckon that people, you know, out of bands, do you ever remember that? Asking you, remember when Tony Jackson split from the Searchers? Now, Tony Jackson was the voice, wasn't he, of the Searchers?
Yeah.
And he formed his own group. Yeah, nothing happened. Can you tell us more about that, if you can?
Yeah, he formed his own group, the Vibrations. But they were never. He never managed to capture anything like the success of that the Searchers had.
Could you tell me? Could you let the listeners know your opinion on that, why he didn't? Because as I said, he was the voice before the split of the Searchers.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly when he left, but it was probably around 64.
Yeah, it was.
I can't remember exactly. And the thing is that the whole beat thing was running its course by then. You know, it was 64 that the British invasion started. You know, the Beatles, Dave Clark 5, and a bunch of bands were really successful, including the Searchers, over in America. And the Americans were even having to invent British-sounding names. Like, before they were the Birds, they called themselves the Beefeaters to try and get a look in. Yeah. But what happened was that beat music really ran its course, and by about 65, then 66, you've got bands like Cream and Jimi Hendrix forming, and that was basically the birth of rock music, as we know it. And I think what probably happened with Tony Jackson was he was 18 months too late in terms of making the move.
So do you reckon that it was just because the Americans wanted the already established names? Do you reckon?
Well, there would have been a lot of that in terms of being able to get onto the tours and the rest there. Yeah. But I think one of the other stories about the Searchers I was like was when Chris Curtis left, he decided he put together a band. He decided put together a new band, and he called it Rainbow, and he started recruiting people, and then he moved on before it was finished, and that was Deep Purple.
Deep Purple, yeah. Now, isn't it? Now, you know, for the listeners out there, obviously they know about the Searchers and everything else, but Chris Crummey was the drummer, wasn't he?
That's right, yeah.
You know, it's just to let the listeners know, because people say, well, what was he in the band?
I always remember my dad saying he lived on the same road and knew the family well, and when they got to number one the first time, he was in the back garden with his drums at midnight, banging away at the drums.
But the thing is, wasn't he leader at the group itself?
He wasn't supposed to be.
No.
Tony Jackson's big problem was he was getting told, you know, you wanted to do a little bit less here, Tony. Yeah. And he said, who are you? You're not the leader of the band. He said, I've been singing them because you the first all number one hits here. Yeah. Why? He said he was getting slowly pushed out, and eventually he went. Yeah. Well, Chris, I think, started to think he wasn't. He had that distinctive drumming style of standing up.
That's right. Didn't he? Well, we had Mike Penzer on the show, and we dared to ask him why. Yeah. You know that. So we did ask Derek Shelmerdine. Yeah. But Derek, we've come to the end, and I'm awfully sorry. The end. It's been absolutely fascinating. People have been sending messages through saying that's fascinating, especially about Ringo Starr,
right?
That they knew nothing about, and the big three, by the way, that Ian Golder knows about now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, actually, I've just put down. while you were talking, I was just searching on Spotify for them, so I'm going to have a little listen later.
No, they're absolutely brilliant. Even Lennon liked them, so if anyone, if Lennon liked them, you've got to like them yourself. I thought they were fabulous. I'll just leave you with this. You know, I mentioned the Dennisons. What did you think of that? I thought they were fabulous myself.
Yeah, they were great.
And I love the Undertakers, as you said. I'm sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, there were just so many really good bands around that sort of time. It was just a great time for that whole 62 to 64, 65 was a brilliant time.
That was the Mersey Beat sounds, wasn't it? That was the Mersey sound. That led the world. I mean, it did, yeah.
London had the Stones and the R&B thing, but the Mersey Beat sound was that was a great the great driving force of the British invasion that went across to America.
Well, it changed the whole concept, didn't it? Really, of music, because everyone, you know, Elvis and everybody else, Chuck Berry and Fats Domino, and you know, great as they were. Don't get me wrong. But they changed the whole of the pattern of music. That's the only way I can put it.
Well, it's thanks to the likes of the Beatles and Cass and the Casanovas and all the others covering the American R&B that Chuck Berry had a career after about 1960. Because from the point of view of the sort of 1950s American rock and roll R&B scene, it was fading away into a very clean-cut pop idol version of rock and roll. Sort of surf music was coming along, and it was when the Beatles and the like took it back to America in '64 that it really revitalized the careers of people like Muddy Waters and Chuck Berry and that whole genre of classic blues and R&B artists. Because most of their success in the 50s, I mean, Chuck Berry had very little commercial success. It's sad to think that My Ding-a-Ling was the only number one he ever had.
That was mad, that, and I never liked that. Derek, honestly, I'm sorry, we have to leave. The next time that you're on, will you come back on?
Oh, I'd love to. I love talking.
Do you fancy talking about the clubs, especially the Iron Door? Because everybody talks about the Cavern. Obviously, we'll bring the Cavern into it, but is there any way that you can talk about the Iron Door? That's where I used to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, brilliant! Now, don't forget, we'll have you on next month, hopefully. Jason will sort it out, as long as you're available, that is. We'll talk about the Iron Door. How about that?
That'd be fabulous.
Oh, thank you and the Cavern. We can't forget the Cavern, obviously. Honestly, Derek, once again, I've got to thank you very much, and the lads would like to thank you as well.
Yeah, thanks for that, Derek. Interesting stuff.
It's my pleasure, guys.
Really, really interesting. I love you coming on, actually, to be honest with you, because it just brings back the greatness of where all this music's come from.
Yeah, it does. Once again, Derek, thank you so much, and we'll speak to you next month.
Thanks a lot, guys. Look forward to it.
Bye, Derek.
Thank you. Well, that was Derek Shelmerdine. That was absolutely that was brilliant, that, wasn't it? Wasn't that brilliant? Well, listen, we're going to go for a little break. We've got For Your Love by the Yardbirds, For Your Love, right? And By the Way, right? And You'll Not See Nothing Like the Mighty Emlyn.
How did I know you were going to say
Is that all right then? Yeah. And Manfred Mann, obviously. So you've got the Yardbirds, the big three, Manfred Mann. Take it away, boys.
Listen to Mersey Radio wherever you are, on air, online, and on your phone. www.merseyradio.co.uk. Whatever you're up to this Sunday, whether it's the DIY, the housework, or you're cooking up a storm in the kitchen, tune into the Sunday Show with Gary Reddin, 2 till 4 every Sunday for the soundtrack to your Sunday, here on Mersey Radio. For the best signed and unsigned artists, tune in Tuesdays at 8 p.m. for WWK Signed and Unsigned with Billy Kelly.
Getting out of bed, rubbing your eyes in the morning, going downstairs and having a cup of coffee, Is that how you start your day? No. What you need to do is open your eyes, lean over, switch your radio on, and listen to The Big Breakfast, Monday to Friday from 7 a.m, getting you out of bed in a different way. Jason Scott.
The Big Breakfast.
Right here on Mersey Radio.
The best in 60s and 70s music, plus a little bit of history. Tune into Frank Carlyle every Monday at 8 p.m. here, only on Mersey Radio.
You'll not see nothing like the mighty Quinn. Come on. Who's listening in? Mo. Mo is listening in. And everybody else around the world. Alan Hodgson, he always listens in. And his daughter Nicola, she's gone to Germany to see her boyfriend, and he's lost.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And she said, Dad, I want you to finish the living room off, because he's decorating it. And he says, oh. Anyway, so crack on after the show, that is, Alan.
Poor man.
Crack on after the show, and I'll see you on Wednesday. Anyway, enough of that. Tim Quinn. This fella is unbelievable. Absolutely amazing, this fella. Have we got Monty Connor listening in? Because Monty is actually coming over, isn't he, from Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah.
And he's playing the Cavern. I want you to go.
Okay, we'll be there.
Yeah, I'll be there.
I want you to go because he's definitely playing the Cavern. And I think Tim Quinn will be telling us something about the Cavern as well, and about people he knows who'll be playing there. And these people are very important, so we'll be going to that as well.
Okay,
brilliant.
Hopefully. You know what I mean? We were there the other week, weren't we?
Yeah.
For Kappa's 30th. Was it
30th?
No, 50th.
It's 50th birthday.
50th birthday.
Album launch.
And unbelievable. You know, the atmosphere. What was the atmosphere like?
Oh, it was great, wasn't it?
Absolutely amazing. And he had Badswolf on.
Yeah.
Because these were American. And they came over all the way from Chicago. And once they got up, it was amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Absolutely
a proper
brilliant.
rock and roll show.
It was proper rock and roll. Absolutely brilliant. Anyway, we've got Tim. And Tim was born in Liverpool. He's a Scouser, you know. And do you know what? He was born in the same year. It's got here, Beryl the Peril.
Yeah.
That first appears in the top. Beryl the Peril. Do you ever remember that?
Remember Beryl the Peril, yeah.
The Topper and the Beezy.
What year was that? What year was that?
1953.
Right. I wasn't here.
Well, all right. Haven't you ever heard of Beryl? Have you heard of the Topper?
I have, yeah.
Have you heard of the Beezy, the Beano and everything?
Oh, the Beano. I won't go into a long story, but
No,
the Beano, I used to get it every Thursday off my auntie.
Did you?
Yeah, she was lovely.
Oh.
She used to bring me the Beano and a curly whirly every Thursday.
And you know what? His dad wouldn't buy him. Or his mum.
And that was
so he had to go to his auntie.
That only ended 5 years ago.
Oh, shut up.
Stop wearing shirts now as well.
Anyway, we're going over to Tim. Hiya, Tim.
Hello there, Frank. Can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear. And
well, I'm amazed.
Brilliant to have you back on again. Now, listen, you know, this is absolutely mad, this. It's I've got something there. Educated by Irish Christian brothers, whose prospectus boasted, we will instill a fear of God into your charge. Now, that's an old saying, is it? Fear of God into, you know, put the fear of God
Well, I've
into...
got an old school prospectus from 1958, and it was my school in Crosby, St Mary's College for boys.
Right.
Now for girls as well. And that's a line in it. That is actually a selling point. And the weirdest thing is to think of my mum and dad reading that and thinking, oh, that's the place for Tim. He needs to have the fear of God instilled into him.
Right. and you know, do you think that's very coincidental for Beryl the Peril? Do you think there was a bit of a rebellion there with Beryl the Peril?
Yeah, because by the time I went to the school, I was a keen reader of all the comics on the newsstands that I could afford. And, I mean, really, certainly the DC Thompson comics, the ones you named just before,
yeah.
They were really putting the boot into authority. You know, many people say that the satire boom started with Peter Cook and Dudley Moore and David Frost. It didn't. It started in the Beano, you know, with Dennis the Menace and the Bashment. Back in 53 and 54, these guys were lobbing bricks at the back of teachers' heads, you know, stuff that you wouldn't get away with in comic books today. It didn't make me pick up a brick and throw it at Christian Brother, but, you know, I lived vicariously through those wonderful stories back then.
I'm going to give you a little bit of trivia here. Do you mind a little bit of trivia?
I thrive on it.
Well, listen to this. You know where they say, you know, it's a saying, isn't it? I've got a fellow historian here, by the way, like facing me, John O'Ware. And where I'll put the fear of God into them. Do you know where that came from, Tim?
Well, I thought it was the Irish Christian Brothers.
I think they nicked us off this particular person.
You mean there's other people equally insane?
Well, oh, yeah, because what it was during the English Civil War, and what Cromwell needed to use an iron rod and an iron fist, you know, to submit the people, you know, to be submissive.
Yeah, anyway, that always works, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And he brought in a fellow by the name of Matthew Hopkin. Right. And Hopkin was the Witchfinder General. Right. And he said, what can you do for me? He said, well, I'll go around to these little villages and whatever. He said, and I'll put the fear of God into them. And that's where it comes from. How about that?
Well, I'm sure that the position will be reopened soon. At the moment. I mean, it's all that's missing in this lunatic world we're banging around in today, you know. Pick up any newspaper, and really all that's missing is a Witchfinder General. I'm sure it's coming.
Do you know what, though? And this is mad. I know what you're saying there. You know, from a Witchfinder General, Matthew Hopkin, to you being a ring boy and clown at Blackpool Tower Circus. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, I know. It was the start of my career, and I look back on it very fondly now, although it was something I didn't put on my CV for many years, because I thought, well, where's that going to get me?
Exactly, but you can afford to put it on now, can't you? You know, well, why not?
I'm very proud that as a 16-year-old, staggering out of school as early as I could, you know, age 16, running out those bloody school gates, that I had the nous, having been sort of beaten and battered into submission by those aforesaid Christian bug brothers, to have the wit to seek out strange and weird people on this planet. And so I found myself the day after leaving St. Mary's College knocking on the stage door of the Blackpool Tower Circus without a clue, really. You know, certainly it wasn't in my head, I'll become a clown. Let's find
fantastic
like-minded people. And luckily for me, the door was opened by Charlie Caroli.
Go away. The clown,
Not only that, but he was in his full makeup, so complete with bowler hat and, you know.
And that mad face he had,
And that mad face. And he looked me up and down, and he said, what do you want? And I said, you know, I would have swept the floor at that point. Incredible. And he looked me up and down, and he said, come in. And he took me to his dressing room, which sounds highly dodgy these days.
Especially dressed up as a clown,
Little innocent Catholic schoolboy here. And sat me down in the chair, you know, and it was one of those wonderful dressing rooms with all the light bulbs round the mirror. And he put whiteface on me and found a costume and bung that on. And for a season, I was one of Charlie's troupe at the Blackpool Tower Circus.
That's incredible. Absolutely.
It beat going to school, I tell you, it did. And it was the strangest thing to... I mean, I was a teenager. I was 16, so full of, you know, self-conscious as can be. But that went west that very day.
Well, can I ask you, you know, because I want to fill so much in. This is fascinating. You know, did that give you the springboard from being a clown, especially with Charlie Caroli? You know, a ring boy and, you know, stroke clown, to being an illustrator and scriptwriter for the Beano, the Dandy, and the Topper and everything else, because obviously you're still into your childhood, aren't you? So you're illustrating, and not only that, you're a scriptwriter for these wonderful comics that we all read.
I think the most important part of us, we have a childlike quality within us, and why should that wither and die when you turn 13 or 14? People bang on about growing up, but if you grow up, who was it? It was J.M. Barrie who said, "Nothing important happens after the age of 2," and I think that's such a great quote, because if you're not careful, you're suddenly on the bloody treadmill that they'll put you on, and there's no time to think anymore. But if you go back to the age of 2 and 3, really you see the wonder of the world. You're climbing trees, you're looking at rabbits, you're looking at the grass grow, and then suddenly you get on this absolutely absurd sort of treadmill towards death. By the time I was at the convent school, first thing they were telling me was, right, Tim, when you die, you'll go to one of 3 places. It'll either be purgatory, limbo, or hell.
That's right.
I'm looking ahead to possibly heaven, but I'd only just been born.
That's only just been born.
I didn't want to go to limbo either, what's in limbo? All the lost souls.
That wasn't for me. That really wasn't for me. So I think I was seeking a bit of fun before I snuff it. Obviously, that did not tie in with the Catholic faith of the period. And it didn't tie in with any sort of academic kind of junk that the school might have put on me. So it was an escape into the world of the arts. And it's all connected, whether you're running around in baggy pants as a clown, or you're writing for the Beano or Spider-Man or whatever. What I really wanted to do was to feel my pulse, to know I was alive. That was my only ambition, to know that I was alive. And I suddenly, the only downside of that is because I have been very alive. And the last 50 years have gone by bang, just like that, which is the only downside of having fun. If I'd been, having an absolute horrible time, I'm sure it would still be 1968. Because time flies when you're having fun.
Well,
but
listen,
I can't complain, can I?
Listen, Tim, obviously you've worked on the Marvel comics, as you said, and the likes of Spider-Man, the X-Men, and the Incredible Hulk. Now, they make films. What do you think of the films compared to how you were working with these comics?
It's great that the films have come along, of course, because these are wonderful characters. The majority of them created by that amazing man, one of my biggest heroes, Stan Leigh. Who created, the majority of the Marvel characters. Astonishing. For me, I have to say I prefer the comics. I think that you can go a million miles further in a comic book with the imagination of a writer and the pencil of the artist than the biggest budgeted movie. So I have a fondness for the comic books myself, and particularly for Stan Leigh's work. Back in the 60s. But I'd say that, wouldn't I? Because, that's when I was growing up.
Yeah, but we've all grown up, and where everyone is associated, everyone is associated with these comics. So we've got a hell of a lot in common. The thing is, if you don't mind, I just want to ask about a certain person, because I used to watch this every single week, and I loved it because I love the arts, as you can imagine. I love the arts. The South Bank Show.
Oh yeah.
And the wonderful Melvin Bragg, or Lord Bragg as he is known today.
Yeah.
What was he like to work with?
Well, you said the word wonderful. He's wonderful to work with. That came about because I was working for Marvel Comics, and Marvel were about to celebrate some anniversary. I forget what it was now. And I wrote to Melvin, and I said, you should do a show about Marvel, because we've been around 50 years or whatever it was, and it really captures American culture like nothing else if you look at the comics of each period, each decade. Much to my surprise, he wrote back and said, hey, next time you're in London, come and see me, and we'll talk about this. So I made sure I was in London pretty swiftly. Wow. And went in, and he said, we want to do it. But none of my producers, directors, know anything about comic books. Would you like to produce it yourself? Wow. To which, as a Liverpudlian, there was only one answer. Yes, of course. And as you're walking out the door, you think, how the hell do I do this? You know. But, I mean, having put many a magazine together by that time and many a comic book, it's just telling a story in the right order, you know. So I was given wonderful film crew. I knew the story inside out. I knew who I wanted to interview. I wanted to interview Stan, you know, the creator of them all, and many other artists and writers. So it was a particularly easy and wonderfully visual show to do. Working with Melvin, once he said, yes, you can do it, he gave me a budget, which was nifty budget, to say the least. And then he gave me 6 months to film it. At the end of the 6 months, I go into the editing suite down at LWT, as it was, and we work on the edit, bring hundreds of hours of film down to the just under an hour, cut, put it in some kind of order to tell the story. And then Melvin comes down with a little notepad. He sits and he watches what you've put together, takes notes. He hands you the notes and he says, just make those changes. And that's it. And the changes were always bang on, absolutely bang on, because by then I'd be so close to the project, I needed somebody with an eye who could come in and see it for what it was there and then. So he was the easiest person to work with. He would always say yes or no when I pitched him an idea, you know, and I like that. I can't bear these people who will say, all right, well, we'll think about it. We'll bring it up at the next meeting and then we'll talk about it and then we won't do it 3 years later. With Melvin, it was always, yeah, or nah, not for us. You know, and I really appreciated that. So he's fantastic. I mean, I did another project outside of South Bank Show with him, where I do a lot of work in schools. And I asked him if I could take some kids along to interview him. And he very kindly said, yeah, tell you what, bring them along to the House of Lords. I'll show them around the house, show them how government works. We'll have tea on the veranda, and then they can do the interview in one of the big rooms. I mean, he took whole afternoon he gave. And this is a really busy man. It made me laugh because the following week, I was going to do another interview, and I thought, who should I do now? Again, with kids, take kids to interview somebody. And I thought, oh, I'll do Michael Gove, because he was head of education at the time, you know, not that I liked him or anything, but I thought, so I ring him up, and he says, what is it? What's it for? And I said, well, it's essentially for a school magazine. Oh, no. You mean it wouldn't be national? I said, no, it's so that children can realise just the extent of what their talents, what they can do. They can interview really famous people. He said, no, I don't have time for that. I said, oh, that's funny, because Melvin Bragg, you know, took us into the House of Lords, took us all around. Now, Melvin Bragg is a writer, he's a broadcaster, he's a producer, and he's a lord. Kind of a busy man. Also, he's 70, whatever he was, you know, at that point. But to be honest, it was a relief, because he wanted to go and see that flabby face get. You know, funnily enough, we did get another MP. We got George Galloway, who was sheer delight.
Oh, brilliant!
And I took delight in taking children to interview him, because I like kids to realise that there's no such thing as black and white. Possibly with Michael Gove there is, but you know. George certainly has a passion for politics, and that passion was a joy to watch him communicate with the kids that day.
That's great, because, you know, for such a controversial figure to adults as George, you know, to bring them into kids.
Exactly. Well, I'll tell you another one I took kids to interview, and that was Jeffrey Archer.
Really?
Yeah, we interviewed him in his penthouse pad, high above Westminster. So he actually,
as you do, you know, penthouse,
he looks down
of
on
course.
Westminster, which I love. And we were doing the interview. Basically, the interview was all about his life. And I'd taken 2 9-year-olds and 2 14-year-olds. And we're halfway through the interview, and this 9-year-old says to him, looking round this wonderful apartment of his, this wonderful penthouse, he says, this is a beautiful place. What was it like going into prison?
Brilliant.
And Jeffrey didn't skip a beat. He said, I'll tell you what it was like going into prison, young man. I found that I was the fittest person there, even though I was in my 60s, and everybody else was in their 20s. I was the fittest person because all the other guys, they were into drugs and cigarettes and booze, and I'd never really been into any of those things. So I found myself to be the fittest person there. However, he said, going into prison, you don't want to do it. It wasn't fun. Don't go into prison. But, again, and when we left, by the time we got out of the building, we had a call from the school saying, he's tweeting about you already. And he was tweeting, being very complimentary about the kids. And he was a guy who spoke to the children. He communicated to them incredibly well. And again, I thought it was great for kids to go, and they did the research beforehand, so they knew he'd been in prison at some point. And again, to realise that, this world is not black and white. There's all shades. So he was fascinating. And again, I tip my hat to anybody who's incredibly busy, who doesn't need promotion in what is essentially a school magazine, but recognises the value to children of doing such a thing. And we've had many, many names do that now. Jeremy Paxman allowed us to go and be interviewed, bless him. Melvin Bragg, as I said, Helen Skelton off Blue Peter, she was an absolute joy. Willie Russell, fantastic.
Willie, I know Willie.
Real people, and
listen, Tim, can you stay on with us, because we're going to play a song and we'd like you to stay on with us if you don't mind.
I will be here.
Oh, brilliant, because this is...
depending on the song.
No, but listen, we're going to play a song unless you want to sing it for us.
It's not Beyonce.
It's about... it's The Siege by Easter
Leigh.
Is that
Easter
okay?
And
then we'll come back and talk about those Easter Leigh, if you don't mind. Is that okay?
Second favourite band after the Beatles.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you before we go to the song. I'm going to tell you one of my favourite cartoon characters.
Okay.
I don't know whether you remember this fella. It was Alf Tupper, Tough of the Track.
Oh yes, of course I remember Tough of the Track. I think he was in the Hotspur or the Wizard.
That's right. Absolutely. I think he was the Osprey.
Was
brilliant?
It
Loved him.
Al Tupper was his name.
Yeah, Alf Tupper, Tough of the Track.
So I remember him well.
Oh, brilliant. I'm made up at that because no one, every time I mention it, no one knows him.
That's because
I thought that I was dreaming him.
Go in a galaxy far away.
Well, this is it, you see. This is the Frank Carlyle Show, you see. Anyway, we'll go right back to you after the Easter Leigh and The Siege, and here it is.
Listen to Mersey Radio wherever you are, on air, online, and on your phone. www.merseyradio.co.uk. If you like classic rock, tune into Will Meadows, Saturdays at 8 p.m. for the best in classic rock and great guitar music. For all your around-the-world sports news, tune into Neil Garner every Monday at 10 p.m. on Mersey Radio. The best in 60s and 70s music, plus a little bit of history. Tune into Frank Carlyle every Monday at 8 p.m. here, only on Mersey Radio.
Didn't that sound like Easter Leigh? Didn't it sound like that James Blunt? And you said Coldplay as well.
Yeah, a bit of Kaiser Chiefs.
And a bit of Kaiser Chiefs, which is...
I like that.
But anyway, now... Tim has actually got something to say about these boys.
Ah.
Yeah, so, and exciting as well.
Right,
so, Tim, are you still there with us?
I am.
Oh, brilliant. While we were off air there, we were just talking about, the Easter Leigh, and it just sounded, as I mentioned, about, James Blunt and the Kaiser Chiefs, as the lad said, and also Coldplay. Now, you know these people, don't you, the bands Easter Leigh?
I do indeed, and I absolutely love them. They are, Nathan, who is basically Easter Leigh. Right. It came about in a very strange way. How long you got? You might want to pour You might want to make some sandwiches.
I'll go for that, like, a few sandwiches.
Because I'm trying to think of the origins of this story, and it goes back to last June. And the origins of this story is Ken Dodd. Ken Dodd came up to me, and he said, there's somebody I want you to meet. And he said, there's two people on this planet who really should know each other. And you're one of them, he said. And I said, who's the other guy? He said, he's the head teacher. And my heart sank because I still hold a grudge.
As you do, yeah.
I know I should let it go, 50 plus years on, but hey. Anyway, he said, come on, I want you to meet him. He's the head teacher of a blind school in Liverpool, St. Vincent. And I said, all right. So we met. And my first thing that I said to this guy, his name's John, I said, so what about Ofsted then? And he, I've heard, working in the arts, I've heard many people swear in my time, but I've never heard anybody swear quite like that, like he did. And
John Patterson, are you talking about?
It is indeed John Patterson.
I know.
Who can swear like a sailor, Popeye, and then some. In the right places. In the right places. He is the finest head teacher I've ever met in my life.
Yeah.
A fantastic guy. We got on like a house on fire. In fact, even more fun than a house on fire.
No, he is a nice fella, actually.
He's beyond nice. So we started talking, and he said, I want you to come to the school. So I thought, yeah, all right. So I went to the school. When I got there, I found that all the students were dressed as superheroes. And it was a very moving sight to see these blind children walking along the corridors with their canes and seeing guide dogs dressed as superheroes. It was, I'll never forget that.
An incredible sight.
It was an incredible sight. And I sat down with some of the students and started chatting with them and asked them, what do you like about superheroes? And they said two things. They said, first of all, a little girl who'd been blind since birth said, I just love the colour, which I thought was fascinating. And then another student said, I love the fact that they want to help people. And I thought that was really nice, particularly in this day and age where superheroes have gone a bit psychotic, quite frankly. I like the superheroes of the 50s and 60s who were just nice
people. They did help people.
Whereas now they're all following Batman's lead, and they're all getting a bit gloomy and dark.
For some reason.
And I love the sort of. For goodness sake, if you're wearing a cape, get a grip. It's as camp as can be, really. So go with that. Anyway, these kids got exactly what I felt about superheroes. So we started talking more and more about it. I found that the children had instigated this scheme to help people over in Africa who were beset by something called a black fly that lays eggs in water systems and makes people go blind.
That's right, yeah.
So the school were raising funds to send over to help these people.
Yeah.
Well, I got home that night, turned the TV on, and below me, who should be on, but this big orange git sort of blabbing on about building walls to keep people out and keep people in. And I thought the juxtaposition that day of having these wonderful children saying they're helping people in Africa, and you've got this heffalump just poisoning the world with his putrid, vile vomit. And I thought, okay, I know whose side I'm on. Got on so well at the school that I was invited back the next day, and John said, I want you to create a comic book for the kids. And I said, well, you know what? I've done thousands of comics in my life, but I've never created a comic book for the blind. So I'm in. Yeah. And sat down with the kids, started talking with them again. And again, there was just this sense of goodness that came from them. One of them had just been to Ypres, or many of them had just been to Ypres.
I should have gone with them.
Well, I said to them, so what's your view of World War One? Stupid question, really. I said, how can you sum up World War One? And this girl said, after much thought, she said, I've just got one word. I said, what is it? She said, sad. And I thought that was a superb word to sum up World War One. If you'd asked me, I would have probably said rage and anger, because my grandfather's blood, roars in my veins at the very thought of war. Because he was one of the poor saps who was born just at the right time to have to go through 2 world wars. And he never forgave the government of this country and the governments of other countries, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so I thought this was superb coming from this little girl. And I said, you know what, you're going to create with me a new comic book, and it's about a superhero team in this school. It's going to be based on you kids. And one of the kids said, but we don't have superpowers. And I said, oh, you've got the best superpower ever. You have super compassion, because you're helping these people in Africa. You're caring about people. You're even looking back 100 years and feeling sorrow for my grandfather. I said, I love that. You're bigger superheroes than any I've ever worked on in my time. So we started putting this comic book together. And this was probably just after the school holidays last summer. And bit by bit, in my spare time, this has been coming together. Been working with a fellow comic book cartoonist. And the more we did, the more of the story we told, the more I realized that this is something that should not just be a part of this school, but it should go into other schools, because the story actually tells the tale of these students who love superheroes deciding to help people in another country fight the black fly. And I suddenly clicked, you know what, we could do this every issue. Each issue, we could say, this is another problem that's happening in the world, and this is how we can attempt to help it. We can't solve it, we can't solve the problem, but we can attempt to help the people who are suffering. And we can do it in an entertaining way within the pages of this superhero comic. But we needed a name for the superhero team. And we came up with this, because we're in Liverpool, we thought, what about the Fab 4000? The Fab 4000. And I brought this up with the kids, and they said, but hang on, there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us and the seeing eye dog around the table. And I said, this is true, and you're all in this comic. But what about if at the end of the story you turn and look at the readers and say, well, we've got these emblems now on our chest, Fab 4000, looks great, but there's only 5 of us. Do you want to join our gang? Do you want to join our superhero team? Do you want to make this the world's largest superhero team? And if you do, send £2 and you'll get this badge, and that money will go towards fighting the black fly in Africa, or whatever cause we decide is the best, most suited cause at that moment for this money to go to. Whether it's something to do with buying guide dogs for the blind, whether it's the RNIB, or something that everybody knows and trusts, and where every penny of it can go towards that. Suddenly, we've got a comic that's really cooking here. This is like a very valid, in this day and age, because I don't know about you, Frank, but certainly I've reached the age now where it'd be very easy for me to go to my armchair and, just as my grandfather used to say, bugger my breakfast every time I turn the news on and read the newspapers, because it's idiotic what's going on out there. But back home, when you're going to schools, you find children, the new generation coming up, with all the hopes and desires and love that we had when we were kids. If we can stop listening to half-wits like Donald Trump, our own hideous hag May, banging on selling warplanes, for goodness sake, and if we can just help each other, it is so simple. But do it in an entertaining way. I'm getting a bit on a soapbox here, and I apologise. But it has rejuvenated me. I feel as buzzed about this as I did when I was 16, stepping out into the ring at Blackpool Tower Circus. And I thank the blind children of St. Vincent's School, Liverpool, for giving me this transfusion of youthful energy. Which I love. We can make a difference, each and every one of us on this planet. We should not just sit in our armchair and think, oh well, it's going to be World War III now, isn't it? No, it's not. If we just well, as Lennon said, power to the people. Who are these dopes who are in charge? You couldn't even begin to imagine that you can make a better world by throwing a bomb in somebody's direction. I think the Romans had that great idea way back. They said, you've got a problem here. His name's Jesus. I tell you what, we don't have bombs, but let's nail him to a tree. That'll do it. That'll make sure nobody follows it. Well, here we are 2,000 plus years later, and people are about to celebrate Easter, even though they can't use the word Easter anymore.
That's nuts. We always talk about political correct. Can I just come in with a little bit of trivia there?
Yeah.
And it's only what you're talking about, St. Vincent's.
Yes.
Well, here in Liverpool in 1791, we had the very first blind school. Did you know that?
I did, because
Edwin Rushton.
But tell me more, go on.
No, Edwin Rushton, he was a slaver, by the way.
Yeah.
And he was on board a ship. And it was this worm that even today they get into the feet or the ankles of people, unfortunately. And it works the way up to behind the eye, and it blinds them.
Yeah.
This worm. Anyway, he went blind. And then all of a sudden, through some miracle or whatever, he had a sight back. So he opened up, because there was lots and lots of people blind, and they were seafarers who actually caught this disease. And he opened this blind school in 1791 in Commutation Row, and unfortunately we pulled it down in 2001, and I tried to fight to save it. I was saying, you can't pull this down, this is historical significance. Anyway, they went and pulled it down, and that's the shame, to be honest, of some people in power at the time here in Liverpool to pull it down.
Not many names, hey, ho ho.
Well, this is it. It's just it's a crying shame. But anyway, it's just something I'd like you to carry on with what you say, because everyone is fascinated. And
are you all still awake? Good. I told you it was a long story. Yeah, I didn't realise myself quite how long. But we're getting there. So this comic's been coming together bit by bit, and I've been learning more and more about the school, and I love it, and I love the kids, and and indeed, my eyesight has been essential to my life. Of course, I can't begin to imagine. So again, it makes it all the more amazing that these people who have got these problems, a major problem in their life, but they're looking out to help other people who are less fortunate than them. You know what one kid said to me? I love this quote. She said, charity begins at home. And my heart sank when she said that. But then she went on, she said, and planet Earth is our home.
Well, there you go. And obviously, she looks at the bigger picture.
Absolutely.
She looks at the bigger picture. She sees the bigger picture.
Well, of course, politicians can't look at bigger pictures because they all know that they'll be out on their ear within a few years, so they have no reason to look at the bigger picture, and this is what causes the problems, right down to knocking buildings down that, we don't need it now, whereas of course we do. History is all important, because otherwise we just carry on making the same idiotic mistakes over and over again. Who would have thought after World War One that we'd have World War Two? It's laughable.
But there's always been wars every decade.
Well,
no matter how you look, there's been wars every single decade.
So now might be the time to stop this, because, we talked about, I know when I was growing up in school, it's how we won the war, but we have to look at how we won the war. We won the war by nuclear bombs,
Well, listen, do me a favour?
Yes.
To go on and on and on. We've only got a few minutes left. East of Eli, they're coming over.
Yes,
can you tell us a little bit more about when they're coming over and where they're going to perform?
Yeah. No, well, let me get to that. Here we go. East of Eli. This is how they came into my world. The kids at the school had got into superheroes initially by watching a wonderful TV series called Supergirl. And they raved about this TV series to such an extent that I started watching it. And I started raving about it. It's the most beautiful TV series I've ever seen. It really captures the spirit of true superheroes. There's messages in every episode, and it's just joy. Beautiful, wonderful actors. And I started reading up on the actors, and it turned out that the actress who plays Supergirl's sister in it runs a charity along with her husband. Her husband is an actor and a musician. And he has a band called East of Eli. And she sings with the band every so often. And I read about this charity, and the whole purpose of the charity was that these two people had got to the top of their respective fields, realised there's not a lot up there when you get there to the top of your tree, and they started this charity whose whole aim is to use the stage that they have of fame to showcase ideas that have been designed to attempt to make the world a slightly better place. And they will take people who don't have that stage, don't have that level of fame, and lift them up there and showcase them. So I thought, hello. I sent a few pages of the comic and how it had come about to this couple, and immediately got a response saying, can we do a Google message with you? Up they come on my screen, and I'm like, hey, there's the girl from Supergirl. Wonderful actress called Chyler Leigh. She was also in, what was it called, Grey's Academy.
Grey's Academy. I used to watch that, actually.
Fantastic. Well, she was one of the, the finer actresses in that. She really is something else. Anyway, we got on like a house on fire again. Really, really well. And then they said to me, do you think it'd be all right if we come to Liverpool and come and meet the kids? And I'm like, well, let me think about that. I said, yeah. And then they said, you know what we'd really like to do? We'd like to play a show, a benefit show for the school. I said, okay. They said, do you know anywhere with a stage in Liverpool? I said, well, have you heard of the Cavern? And they fell off their seats. They said, the Cavern. I said, yeah, the Cavern. And I said, well, cool. I said, when are you coming? They said, well, next month, May. I said, well, hang on. Chances are they're booked up. Let me go and see John and Bill at the Cavern. So I went into John and Bill the following day, stopped my story. I'm halfway through it. And Bill, the two of them are just the greatest guys ever. And I'm halfway through the story, and Bill says, what do you want? You got it. So they've given us the Cavern on the 29th of May. Bless them.
That's absolutely wonderful.
It is, it's sheer joy. I mean, because everybody's doing this for the right reasons. And there's going to be, between now and then, there's going to be bigger announcements. I like to think.
Well, listen, we've only got a minute to go. Right.
Well, because you keep interrupting me, Frank.
Let's see. Okay.
Get a word in edgeways, you know.
Well, listen, Tim. Will you come on next month? Will you come on next month before the, before the gig, a couple of weeks before the gig, and talk about it more?
I absolutely love to.
Do you think they'll come on our show before then as well? Do you reckon?
Who knows? I mean, I would like to think so, but I with a bit of luck, I will certainly.
If you can Skype them or send them a message, because they can actually.
The way we're talking at this moment is the way that I communicate with them. So, with a bit of luck, we might be able to arrange that. We shall see.
That's brilliant, Tim.
Keep playing the music, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's absolutely brilliant.
I'll fill you in, but the idea is that we're going to have a launch for the comic on that day as well. So
brilliant. Okay. Well, listen.
There's also going to be an auction at Cavern that day, a celebrity auction, and I will fill you in on more details about that. Okay. Because guess what? These guys know everybody in Hollywood.
Yeah.
So,
that's absolutely wonderful. I'll tell you for why. If we can get them on the show, it'll be not only a coup for us, but also it'll be for everything. Well, everything, possible for the Cavern. Because I know the people down there myself.
I'm well aware of that. It was quite funny, actually. Do we have 10 seconds?
Go on.
Okay. Well, they said to me, we'll get all sorts of celebrities involved in this because they want to be members of the Fab 4000, and I love that. Yeah. And they said, we'll get our friends, our celebrity friends. I said, tell me, who do you know? They said, well, for example, we know Chris Evans. Right. And my heart sank for a moment as I thought it was the Ginger Git.
Yeah,
Thankfully, it was, of course, Captain America, no less. Yeah. So I'm more than happy to have Captain America as a member of the Fab 4000, but you got to draw the line somewhere with the other Chris Evans.
Oh yeah, well he's a dope anyway.
Well,
but listen, we've got to finish.
So, we do have strong views, don't we?
Absolutely. And you're on next month.
We don't care who knows.
Oh, this keeps going on, doesn't it? Anyway, you're coming on next month, okay? And we'll have an hour for you, to be honest. That's a promise, that. We'll have a full hour. And it'll be absolutely fascinating, okay?
Okie dokie, Frank. All the best to you.
Absolutely wonderful, Tim. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
All the best.
Well, that was the wonderful Tim Quinn, the mighty Quinn. Might as well give him Tim, the mighty Quinn. How's that? Anyway, this is Frank Carlyle for Mersey Radio, and it's been an absolutely wonderful evening. We've got John O'Hare, who's going to say
goodbye,
and we've got Ian Golder.
Ta-da.
Oh, what a day. What a day, like. Hey, what a day. Anyway, the show wouldn't have gone on really without the producer, boy genius, boy wonder, the wonderful, who boys?
Frank Carlyle.
The producer. You're not coming on again, you're too tired. Anyway, the wonderful Jason Pinnington, and God's willing, see us all again next week. Thanks for listening in, and we'll speak to you very soon with loads of music, loads of chat, and me and them and him. Thank you. Good night. Bye bye.